Welcome, everybody. So this morning we're talking about two of my favorite topics, innovation and risk. And we're kind of going to talk about how the two can't be separated, but actually how there's a proven way of managing both together to get the best out of both sides. So I guess just by way of some quick intros, to those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Sam Armondi. I'm co-founder and managing director here at ThoughtQuarter. And I guess every agency, every business has their thing. And our thing is helping change makers. So we work with organizations that are driving change in this world. And that change might be relatively simple or it might be massively complex. But the commonality is that innovation is usually the secret sauce that allows them to be change makers. And we only do three things. We do strategy, i.e. figuring out how to deliver that innovation. We do design, designing that innovation and making sure that it can happen in a sustainable and purposeful way. And software development, delivering that innovation in a way that makes a real impact. So this morning I'm joined by George and Ash, so perhaps I'll let you guys introduce each other. George?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, my name's George. I'm the tech lead at ThoughtQuarter. So I suppose my responsibility sort of usually spans the sort of overseeing the delivery process, getting involved kind of quite directly with clients when we're having discovery sessions to sort of try and understand and work out their requirements for what it is that they actually want built, leading technical direction, and otherwise ensuring that we've kind of got the right people for the right projects, making sure that we're always building the right solutions as well.
Brilliant. And, thank you.
I'll pass you to Ash.
Morning, everyone. So I'm Ash Wood. I'm the product owner at ThoughtQuarter. My main responsibility is establishing those client relationships and really understanding their requirements in their product and relaying these requirements back to the delivery team, working closely with the technical team to refine those and ensure that the delivery is as accurate as possible and what the client wants.
Excellent. And I think it's fair to say that you're both from fairly innovation-heavy backgrounds, aren't you? Even before your time at TQ. So Gash, you were in fintech. George, you were in insurance tech. Both of those sectors have seen a lot of innovation. You've probably been part of a lot of that innovation. You've probably also been the victims of some of that innovation. So I'm really looking forward to hearing kind of how your experiences and what we can share in terms of practical tips. Now, in keeping with the usual formula for these sessions, we're going to boil it down to just three things that we're going to focus on. Number one, and I know it's a real basic, but what is risk and what is innovation? And I always like to do this kind of definition piece because there's so much variability around what everybody interprets those terms to mean. And we're going to share our interpretation of those, and we're going to share why they're intrinsically linked. And it's impossible to have one without the other. Secondly, we're going to talk about FOF, fear of failure. It's a known fact that innovation requires an element of failure. Failure causes an element of fear. And if you're not careful, you can cut out the middleman there and end up with a fear of innovation. So how do we bridge that gap? And finally, we're going to talk about the nuts and bolts of it, the practicalities of how to mitigate risk across discovery, definition, and delivery. We'll share a couple of process graphics, and we'll talk into some real detail about how we're going to do that. Now, we're going to keep this session to about half an hour, so we're probably going to discuss it for the next 20 minutes and try and save the last few minutes for questions. So please get your questions in as we're going through, and then we'll pick them up in the Q&A at the end. So perhaps I'm going to start with you, George. Tell me, what is your definition of innovation and risk in the real world?
Yeah, so defining risk and innovation is kind of an interesting one. I know I was sort of pondering it for quite a while before we started this. I was sort of asking myself, what is my definition of risk and innovation? But I think for me, risk is it's really almost about the kind of almost the expectation of loss or foreseeing potential problems that could kind of incur danger. Really, I think in some ways, risk is almost a bit of a near friend of worry. Really, it's not a comfortable feeling. I don't think, that's for sure. But innovation, on the other hand, is I think really that kind of springs to mind the kind of feeling of kind of new or novel idea generation. And I think especially kind of in the space of software, that can be down to kind of new services, solutions, products, and anything that really delivers something valuable, something that's kind of useful to people, and it's sort of impactful artifacts, really, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I
like that.
Yeah,
Anything that delivers something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very close to my definition. Ash, what's your view? What innovation risk? What did it mean to you?
So risk for me is almost any element that, if not done correctly, has exposure to danger. And obviously that can have quite heavy consequences. And innovation, I quite like to keep it quite broad in the fact that I think if you just have even a general thought or exploring new ideas or challenging current ideas, I think that all counts towards innovation.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And it's a conversation I quite frequently find myself having with both clients and prospects. I think sometimes we associate innovation with really big stuff, like putting someone on the moon is an innovation. Whereas actually innovation can be massively smaller. If you're already doing e-commerce, but you choose to integrate your e-commerce with your warehouse management, that's an innovation. It might be a small piece of work. It might be a small change, but it's something your business is able to do better thanks to a step forward in either process or technology, understanding, environment, or all of those things. That's thanks. They're really helpful definitions. And Ash, I guess in your product owner role, you often find yourself as being the bridge between the innovation and the actual implementation of it.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about why we can't find a way to deliver innovation without risk?
Ooh, good question. I think, because you want to keep as much innovation open as possible when you are chatting to clients about their products and changes. And I guess you could almost talk forever to them. So it's trying to almost be realistic in what can we take and what can we feasibly implement to reach those minimal viable products and really just ensure that client acceptance, really.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we're having this discussion yesterday, and it turned into a much bigger discussion. Sometimes people think that by very tightly defining a solution or having a very, very, very specific brief, they're actually helping us or whoever implements that solution to reduce risk. And I think our view was kind of the opposite. George, maybe you can talk through that from a tech point of view, and then Ash will talk about it from a product point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think even kind of linking this back to I think what you had written down a second ago, kind of I think the nature of the kind of the intrinsic link between risk and innovation, and why one can't really exist with the other. I think that's really kind of about. I mean, I think it's worth saying to begin with that innovation is difficult. It's by no means an easy feat to kind of empower it. It's really kind of, you need to sort of push yourself out of your comfort zone, and what kind of traditionally feels familiar. I think one of the kind of phrases or statements that really comes to mind here is if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And that mentality is absolutely rife through the industry. We've been doing this for X amount of years, and it's worked for us up until this point. So why do we need to change it? But I think that's a really dangerous mentality, because I think it's the very antithesis of innovation itself. You have to be able to make mistakes, I think, in innovating, and if you can't sort of accept that you are going to potentially fail sometimes, then I think you're failing to innovate.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we'll pick that up in a second when we talk about fear of failure, because it's a fine balance. And I think that point of if it's not broken, don't fix it, it definitely has a place. It definitely, there are things in a business that you shouldn't try to fix if they're not broken, but it's very dangerous to extend that to 100% of your operations and processes. And I think we were talking yesterday about the Henry Ford quote. If you ask people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, which is kind of, it's natural, isn't it? Like, the human brain naturally defaults to coming up with solutions. And actually, I guess, Ash, probably the biggest chunk of your day is trying to pull people back and help them to focus on the problem. Am I right?
Yeah, totally. And it's easy to get sort of siloed into a really specific area, and trying to work out the little bits within it. And you almost need to take that step back and really understand the bigger picture, and how actually, if you took a step back, and you could almost cut out some links and make the whole process more efficient. So yeah, it's really important.
Excellent. And I think we'll pick up that discussion in a second, because I'm conscious I've got a terrible habit of skipping ahead. So I think when we talk about process, I really want to dig into like the how. How do you do that, and how do you help people step back from the brink of solutionizing rather than focusing on the challenge? But maybe we can talk about our second point, that fear of failure. George, you mentioned that it's kind of, innovation is difficult. We have to accept that we're going to make some mistakes. As a client, that's kind of terrifying. If the people you're trusting to solve your problem are coming in going, "Hey, great news, we made some mistakes today." How do we how do we bridge that gap? How do we help our clients understand that actually it's not failure? It is simply part of the learning process and part of the innovation process.
Yeah, that is a tricky one, I think, especially. So bridging that gap, trying to get clients to understand, I think, what the innovation process is all about, and kind of, I think, getting comfortable with the concept of failure. It is maybe a bit alien to begin with, but I think it's first and foremost very human to recognize that we learn from our mistakes. That's, I think, the only way that we've all sort of got here today, really, to begin with. But I think when it comes down to kind of trying to get comfortable with the fear of failure, I think there's a lot of different things that you can do, and I think we'll go into kind of a few more examples sort of later on. But I think first and foremost, I think probably the one that seems to turn heads quite a lot, make people sort of more open to the idea is making sure that you can kind of keep the cost of failing quite low, because I think I think it's all well and good sort of trying to preach to the hills and sort of say, we're going to make mistakes, and that needs to be okay. And I think that's fine, as long as you have a kind of an effective process to manage failure. Because if you're going to fail, I think you want to do it quick and painlessly, rather than hard and extremely costly, I think.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's all right. It's all right. But and yeah, I think there's a good couple of examples we can probably go into later. But it's I think definitely in any sort of project life cycle, it's really, really important to identify those kind of really risky assumptions that you're making about requirements or a given project solution, whatever it might be. And very really early on in that cycle, kind of trying to find quite lightweight methods to kind of iron out those assumptions, or test and also kind of test early and often, just so that you can kind of validate, I think, your assumptions or come to kind of new conclusions, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of sense that we're circling round the process time. So I think it's a good time to actually start talking about the how and the practicalities. Perhaps let's just pop our process slide back up, because I think it's just worth talking about the practical way in which we usually do it. So typically our clients will approach us with a challenge, and I think the temptation is to jump straight into delivery. But we forcefully go through this discovery, definition, design, and then delivery piece. And I guess, George, to pick up on your point about having that failure early, I guess the further to the left of the process we can push this supposed failure, the cheaper it is, isn't it? You know, it's much cheaper to draw a user interface on a piece of paper, and a client goes, "Oh no, that's not going to work," rather than go all the way through a design, development, deployment cycle, and then them turn them down at user acceptance testing. So I guess during a discovery and definition stage of a project, Ash, we talked before about helping clients to step back from this solutionizing. Can you talk to us about some of the techniques that you use, and maybe even some examples of how you've helped clients kind of really focus on the challenge rather than on the solution?
Yeah, sure. So I quite like to put in place some discovery sessions where I take in a defined agenda. So I've got agenda points on all the topics that I want to cover. And then it's just really ensuring in those sessions you are making sure the participants are really collaborative and almost like no question's a silly question, and just really trying to get to the bottom of the functionality and the why as well, and what value that provides. I think that's really crucial because it's so easy to get bogged down in, we want this button, and it's like, well, why do you want that button? And they've not actually thought of that. And that's, I guess, just software development in a nutshell, really. And it's, refining those requirements and then taking them away and putting them into feature sets and user stories, and really understanding the user flow, because you want to ensure that you're building a product that is tailored towards the customers and the users that will use them and benefit from them.
Yeah, I think those user flows are really important, aren't they? Because it's really tempting to think about a feature in isolation, but actually when you view it as part of an end-to-end user flow, it really forces you to think about the sequence, the boundaries, the context, and it kind of drives it forward. And in terms of capturing those requirements or eliciting those requirements, how do you push for the real need? I think we sometimes refer to it as black box requirement gathering, don't we?
Yeah, so black box requirement gathering is almost just getting the view on the client's requirements. So they will almost have a predefined list, or you gather all of those. And the risk with black box requirement is almost you're not taking into account the internal software or the environment that you will be using to develop these changes on. So it's really trying to balance the client's requirements with what's feasible, and that nicely ties into the definition stage of the cycle, where I will take all those requirements to our internal delivery team and sort of do a technical refinement session. So ensuring that the requirements are feasible, they fit within the estimates, so they're all within budget, and also in sizable chunks as well. Because you don't want to be having tickets that are, 2, 3, 4 days worth of work, because there's a lot that can go wrong, and you want to keep it small, almost just to validate the process as well. So those tickets can move along quicker, and it sort of gives that just internal satisfaction as well, because the devs are churning through tickets, being tested, reviewed, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's. I think it's a really important one, isn't it? I think that kind of black box requirements gathering it's definitely all about kind of trying to keep the process kind of quite boundaried, isn't it? Really, I think it's trying to make sure that you don't end up with your client kind of almost trying to build the product that they want a little bit, because I think they've got a good idea of what they want, but it should definitely be kind of like, I think, up to the engineering capacity to go away and do what they do best, which is work out kind of how to build it, and first and foremost make sure that they're building the right product. So I think keeping those sort of problem statements high level is paramount. Yeah,
brilliant. And I guess particularly during that define stage, so we've captured all of these requirements. We've refined them, we've distilled them down, we're starting to match them up with what's possible. What role do technical proof of concepts and prototypes play in reducing that risk? Perhaps George will talk about the proof of concept stuff first.
Yeah, absolutely. So proof of concepts and prototypes, it kind of links in quite nicely with, I think, what I was discussing a moment ago. So, proof of concepts and prototypes are typically done very early in the life cycle of a project, or maybe kind of at the beginning of kind of a brand new sort of piece of work, I think. And they're really important because they are exactly what I discussed a moment ago. Really, I suppose it's that lightweight mechanism of kind of trying to validate an idea or prove something its feasibility without sort of jumping in and getting bogged down in what would maybe eventually be a production solution. Because if you follow that thread all the way down the line and kind of you've got months and months ahead with it, and then kind of discovered one of your risky assumptions early on has all of a sudden hamstringed the entire project, it's going to be extremely costly to change that. However, if in the early phases of the life cycle, you'd sort of spend a really short amount of time sort of just spinning up a proof of concept, whatever it might be, anything that really helps you sort of validate what it is that you need to kind of mitigate some risk there. If you get to the other side of it and you go, fantastic, yeah, we feel like we have more confidence in I think the solution we're about to build. Or on the flip side, if it sort of surfaces more information that indicates that maybe a different approach needs to be taken, then that's invaluable, I think. And I think they're a fantastic tool to kind of help manage it.
Brilliant. And I guess by definition, a proof of concept. So our definition of proof of concept is kind of a technical piece of code that exercises dependencies, integrates with APIs, does stuff, and we try and keep those quick and dirty internally. We just want to prove the technical functionality. We're not really focused on the way it looks.
No, it doesn't need to be pretty, does it? No, not really.
On the look and feel side, Ash, we talked about those user flows, and I guess that's where a prototype becomes really helpful, because you can show a client how their innovation will translate into real life. Can you talk us through how we build one and kind of what tools we use?
Yeah, sure. So I think prototype's massively beneficial to the client. It's almost like a playback of all those requirements and ensuring that they have been captured correctly. And I think it's a massively beneficial visual learning tool as well, because it's all well and good talking all the time about all these little requirements, but you can really see them all tying in together. And it's really important for that stakeholder approval as well. And I think you get a lot more feedback out of a prototype than just chatting about requirements. So that always drives more innovation, to be honest, and just reduces that risk, because you can see it and you can approve it. We tend to use Figma for sort of using the prototypes, and it's just creating those different user flows throughout the product.
Yeah, I think I really like the point of it creates more innovation, because if we just flip back to our process slide, it's really tempting to look at our innovation process and see it as linear. Kind of, we start discovery, definition, great, we've done that, let's jump into design, great, let's now jump into delivery. But actually, in the real world, once we've been through that discovery and definition stage, we set ourselves up to get into delivery, but then each sprint needs to go through that mini discovery, which may contain user flows, it may contain wireframes, prototypes, proofs of concept, etc. And that's kind of I don't know about you, but for me, that's the secret sauce to keeping the pace of innovation and reducing the risk, because we're doing it sprint by sprint. We have an overarching blueprint, but we're chunking it up and accepting change as it comes through. And I'm conscious that we're rapidly closing in on time. We've got a couple of questions to get through. So I just have one last question to pick up with you, Ash. We talk here about refinement in these sprints. We've already specced out or kind of blueprinted the work that we're going to do. Why are these refinement sessions essential in balancing risk with innovation?
So the refinement sessions are really important in balancing risk and innovation, because it ensures that the requirements can be built effectively, accurately, within the time budgets. And once you've refined the requirements, you can get an understanding of how big they are, how much time they're going to take. So then that will drive your sprint planning. So you know that in sprint 1, you're taking in an allotted amount of work that we know with the sprint cadence that the team's performing at, we can deliver that successfully. And by further refining it as well, you are reducing the sort of prone to bugs and for rework as well. And it should just reduce the whole UAT feedback cycle as well.
Great. So I guess a refinement session is actually our way of managing the risk for the next sprint and the sprint after that and the sprint after that, isn't it? So we are kind of constantly revisiting the plan to make sure that it's as risk-proof as it can be, whilst maximizing the innovation. Great. Well, thank you both. I'm going to try and save a couple of minutes for questions, but we are going to finish bang on time. I guess to touch back on our key takeaways, innovation doesn't have to be massive. It's not about putting somebody on the moon. It's just about doing something new. But it is crucial. You know, you think back to the Henry Ford example. If you don't innovate, or you innovate in the wrong way, you could find yourself as having a faster horse when your competitors actually come up with a race car. And that, for any business leader or for anyone trying to carve out their position in the market or in an ecosystem, could be fatal. We can only innovate if we deal with fear of failure. Mistakes will happen, but it's about having a process that pushes those failures as early as possible and makes them happen as cheaply and as quickly and in as blame-free a way as possible. And overly specific requirements can have the opposite effect. You need an open-minded process that's focused on mitigating that risk. And we showed how we do it through discovery, definition, design, delivery, but then crucially revisiting those stages for each sprint and delivering in an iterative way. George, Ash, thank you. Really appreciate kind of hearing this stuff. I know I get the joy of working with you guys every day, so I hear this far more frequently than everybody else, but thank you for sharing your expertise. We've just got a couple of questions. Actually, the first one's not a question. George, there's a comment here that says your shirt's very nice. So thank you. You're raising the sartorial standards. We've got time for one question, which could evolve into a really big one. How long does this discovery and definition process usually take? Ash, seeing as you typically drive it, I'm going to drop this hot potato in your lap.
How long is a piece of string? That's a good question. They can almost be as long as they need to be. I think it's really important in those sessions to make sure that everyone is staying on track and you're not drifting down rabbit holes, and really trying to put in strict boundaries when you are having these requirement discussions. We typically try to have 3-4 discovery sessions, and then normally before our sprints start, we normally have a sprint 0, which is typically 2-3 weeks, where those refinement sessions will happen.
Yeah. So I guess kind of thinking about it in week terms, we're probably looking at about a 6-week period, give or take, depending on availability and everything else. Great. And George, on that topic, typically how much work and time is involved in putting together a proof of concept or pulling together a prototype?
I suppose it's kind of a hard one to quantify, because I think it really depends on what it is you're trying to prove. I think if it's kind of quite a visual piece and it's maybe focused more on a user interface or a front end, those will typically be quite quick, because we have sort of a fantastic set of tooling available to kind of knock these things together quite quickly. I think if it's more of a technical solution that you're trying to prove, that could be a little bit more involved, take a little bit longer, I think, because you could be validating any number of things. If maybe you're sort of saying, oh, can this system scale to a 10x factor, and being able to kind of handle millions of users, then that's a harder thing to prove. I think it will take more time. But ideally, your proof of concept should be constrained. It should be. I think in most cases, nothing should really ever take you kind of over a week or two in the kind of even in the most kind of complicated scenarios. Really, it's meant to be quick and dirty, and you shouldn't be kind of investing or getting too attached to it at all. Really. So
great. I think we refer to proofs of concept and prototypes as cattle rather than pets, don't we? We don't want to get too attached to them because we may replace them. Great. George, Ash, thank you. I promised we'd finish on time. My apologies for going a few seconds over. Thank you to all who've joined us, and we'll see you on our next session. Take care, everybody.